Thank you very much for inviting me to this place and speak something about Savitri. Savitri is a vast ocean. You may call it ocean of honey, ocean of milk, ocean of nectar. And the more and more you plunge into it, the more and more of its honey, its nectar, its milk, you keep on drinking, drinking constantly. It is not only an ocean. I will say there are oceans above oceans, seven oceans climbing up one above the other. And it is impossible for us even to swim in any one of them a few meters with our faculties. Impossible to swim, but still we can always make foolish attempts to touch it, to at least walk into it and see how much we can get out of it. We will put our hand in the ocean, pick up some water and try to drink it. Well, that itself is the greatest reward and it is surely a great blessing for all of us. Essentially, what I am going to say today will be not the Mother's Yoga, but something what we have in the seventh book of Savitri, the book of Yoga in Savitri, the book of Yoga. The book of Yoga is a very attractive name in several ways, and we immediately rush and say, here it is, I should follow this yoga. This is written for us to do the yoga. But let me tell you, right at the outset, it is not your yoga, it is not my yoga, it is certainly not my yoga, it is the yoga of Savitri. Yoga absolutely unique to Savitri. It cannot be carried out by anybody else apart from Savitri. It is Savitri's yoga to the extent that even possibly Ashwapati too cannot do that yoga. Ashwapati's yoga is a different yoga. Savitri's yoga is a specific yoga for Savitri. And there is a kind of a unique purpose behind this yoga. There has to be some kind of a fulfillment in her yogic pursuit. And it is for that purpose she has to do the yoga. Now, before we proceed further, let me give you some statistics about this book, the Book of Yoga. In the Book of Yoga, that is the seventh book of Savitri, there are 7 cantos, Sapta Ratnani, 7 jewels, gems, whatever you want to call it. And each has its own dazzle and beauty and brilliance, each gem. In all, in the original edition of Savitri, there are 3,167 lines in the Book of Yoga, 3,167 lines in the 1950-51 edition of Savitri. Essentially, this book was written by Sri Aurobindo in 1947, almost towards the end of the whole process of his yogic association, or what you want to call it. 1947 means the entire quintessence of his spiritual power is put in it. Now, in those days, Shebendhu was not in a position to write Savitri in his own hand. So most of the book is a dictated book. It has come out in the form of a dictation. Still, at times, he used to scribble some lines in his own hand on small sheets of papers, chit pads, maybe 5 lines, 10 lines, something like that. He used to scribble on those lines. He's coming out of the bathroom, something happens, he scribble down on the sheet of paper, you see. On one occasion, when Shebendhu was coming out of the bathroom, Champaklal saw something on his lips, as if he wanted to utter something, Shebendhu. And he immediately had the perception that perhaps he wants to write something about Savitri. And immediately he used his paper and pencil, the kit pad and pencil to Shebendhu, and he would write a few lines here and there. Now, many of those lines are very difficult to read. His handwriting was not steady at that time, but that was the basis of the composition of the Book of Yoga. So those chit pads were taken up, they were read out by Nirodbaran to Shebendhu. Then Shebendhu would pick up the thread and start dictating Savitri. So that is how the Book of Yoga was, so to say, composed. Composed because it has to come down on the physical plane. It already existed elsewhere. It had to just get transcribed here, and that is how it happened around 1947. Before he took up this book, he had completed, again, more or less by dictation, in 1945 and 46. A little before this book, the first 2 books of the second part of Savitri, The Birth and the Quest and the Book of Love. He had completed those things. He also dictated and did something in 1946 on the Book of Fate. When that was more or less ready, then he came to the Book of Yoga. In the Book of Yoga, as I said, there are 7 cantos, and the total number of lines is 3,167 in the original edition. In the final revised edition, I don't know final, but in the revised edition, the total number of lines is 3,172. In other words, there are 5 extra lines in the revised edition of Savitri. There were a few additions made and few subtractions also made with respect to the 1950 edition. But we will not go into those details. Now, there is some kind of an interesting statistics or data about the number of sentences you have in each canto of this Book of Yoga. I have collected some of them here. In the first canto of this book, there are 2 sections. In the first section, there are 19 sentences, and in the second section, there are 50 sentences. In other words, the first canto has in all 69 sentences. In the same way, in the second canto, there are 122 sentences. In the third canto, there are 126 sentences. In the fourth canto, 178 sentences. In the fifth canto, 81 sentences. In the sixth, 151 sentences. And in the last canto, seventh canto, 58 sentences. So the longest is the fourth canto with 178 sentences. So the total number of sentences in the book of Yoga is 785. 785 sentences and 3167 lines. In other words, on an average in Savitri, everywhere, this is an example, in Savitri, everywhere, there are per sentence 4 lines. If you go by the statistics, then each sentence has roughly 4 lines. There can be at times only one sentence. There can be at times 33 sentences, 33 lines also. But if you take the overall average, it turns out throughout Savitri that there are 4 sentences, 4 lines per sentence on average. Now this is in a way important. Why I am telling you this one is because in one of the earlier drafts of Savitri in the 1930s, Shevendra wrote to Amal Kiran that there is a tendency to fall into stanzaic composition, as if the inspiration comes in 4 lines, stanza of 4 lines each one. And he would like to break that thing so that the monotony of the stanza is removed. And yet the stanza persists, it says 25% of the sentences are stanzas. But they are so much dispersed with other variation that it gives you another kind of a relationship with the entire composition. And I would say that is the beauty of it. Now, the book of Yoga begins with a very, very puzzling line. Of course, you may ask, which line in Savitri is not puzzling? There is nothing complicated in terms of its English, in terms of its words, yet there is always something puzzling. You see, the very first 2 sentences of Savitri, it was the hour before the gods awake, finished. And the next, across the path of the divine event, the huge folding mind of night, alone in an unlit temple of eternity, lay stretched immobile upon silence of Mars. It is a very puzzling description. It is also very revelatory description. It is also luminously packed with its occult content. Those 5 lines itself. The question is, rather, in the very first 2 sentences, we are immediately introduced to the problem of Savitri. Savitri at the epic. Yes, it was the hour before the gods awake, and the mind of night is standing in the way of the divine event. That is the problem which has been posed straight away in the first 2 sentences. The mind of night is blocking the arrival of the divine event. Now the question is, see, it's a very straightforward sentence, yet it's further puzzling. Mind of night, therefore, has to be removed if the divine event has to proceed further, has to arrive. How it is going to be done, those are matters of detail. Savitri will come, do this, do that, etc., etc. Those things will happen. But that has to get dispersed first, the mind of night. Now, if the problem connected with the mind of night, that the divine event is not able to arrive, Or is the problem connected with the fact that the gods are still asleep? Which is the thing which is causing this difficulty? Is it because the gods are not awake, therefore the divine event is not able to proceed? Therefore, the mind of night is taking advantage of it and proceeding further. Now, which is happening, which? That is a puzzle. That is a puzzle. Perhaps we could hazard some kind of a guess. The gods will not awake until the divine event arrives. Until the divine event arrives, the gods will not awake. That is perhaps the crux of the whole matter. The gods will arrive when the divine event is cleared. And when is it going to be cleared? 1 hour after the divine event has arrived. It was hour before the gods awake. Hour before the gods awake. So within that 1 hour, the whole of Savitri, almost 24,000 lines had to run through and bring this point here to the first line itself. The gods will awake when Savitri has conquered death. When Savitri comes down with the soul of Satyavan, holding it like a bird close to her bosom and coming down to the earth. Savitri will come down, and in that wake of her coming down will come Krishna and Kali. Krishna and Kali will come, and that is the arrival of the divine event. That is the arrival of the divine event. When Krishna and Kali, the Anandamaya Purusha and the dynamic divine Shakti, when they arrive here in this mortal creation, they come to the Mrityu Loka, then it is the beginning of the divine event. And when the divine event arrives, yes, gods are happy. Yes, we are now ready to take the work forward. It has been done now. The field is open for us to carry out the manifestation further. So, all that whole of Savitri, 24,000 lines, minus those 5 lines, happen during that 1 hour, you see. Now, it is in that context, if you see the very first line of the book of Yoga, the puzzle becomes very acute. Fate followed her, forcing a mutable road. Finished. It's a complete sentence. There is no complication as far as the construction is concerned, as far as the English is concerned. It's a very plain, simple, direct line, you see, straight away. Yet, there are so many issues which are locked in this one single line. Fate followed her, forcing a mutable road. The first question which strikes with puzzling mental beings is fate followed her. That her stands for whom? Is it standing for fate? Is it standing for Savitri? What is it standing for? The poet is a very clever person and he has kept it handy for our benefit. Fate followed her, forcing a beautiful road. Again, forcing. Forcing by whom? Was it forcing by Savitri? Was it forcing by fate? Was it forcing by somebody else? And there is something in that road which nobody can alter. It has to happen, it has to go along those lines. Nobody can change it. Who has forcing that road of fate or of Savitri or whatever it is? Perhaps it's a difficult question. In fact, I would like to have some reflections from everybody. I am not able to resolve that issue, really, frankly speaking. But still, one of the possibilities of looking into it could be in the previous canto, previous book, the book of fate. Narad has timed his visit very well to enter Ashwapati's palace. 1 hour before Savitri's return to the palace. 1 hour before Savitri is coming back from the Shalva woods to the palace, Narad is already present in the palace hall in the company of Savitri's parents. He comes here early morning, maybe around 8 o'clock or so, from his haven in paradise. He has timed his journey perfectly well. There is no traffic jam, and he comes exactly 1 hour before the arrival of Savitri. And he sings to the royal host the song of love for 1 hour. Narad sings the song of love for 1 hour. And as he is singing the song, arrives Savitri after her discovery of Satyavan in the Shalva forest.